The Honourable Rod Caddies.
Thank you, President. Now, I rise to speak on this and say that I'm going to support this referral to the Legislation Committee. We've spoken yesterday about this and the concerns I raised yesterday, especially in regards to the age of the mothers that may be the surrogates being 18 and being dropped from what it was from being 25 and to have had a baby. That is a huge concern, and it's very obvious that there's serious problems with this bill just in that alone. That is a major concern for myself, and I went back and called a few people last night to really confirm that, you know, I actually rang a few ladies I knew, young ladies, just to you know, get an idea of what they thought about what I was presenting, and that it wasn't unrealistic to state that an 18-year-old girl doesn't have I wouldn't say capability, but they haven't had the life experience or understanding yet. We've heard it before from other members here that the maturity of the mind isn't quite there to be making them decisions, to be carrying a baby for someone else where you're going to have to give that up. We heard the Honourable Michelle Hoffman talk about it in depth about the different things that mothers go through with different pregnancies. So it's not even like we can say that there's just this one standard fit, that it's okay. We know it's going to be okay because women, you know what they're doing. They can choose. They know they can have a baby and give it away. They'll be fine. They don't know how they're going to be physically, mentally, psychologically. They just don't know that. So, and at 18, how could we expect them to know that? We know a lot of
Order member.
Research, even when...
Order member. Noting the time, I'm required to interrupt debate for question time.
Now, before we broke for question time, I was stating that I supported the referral to the Legislation Committee, and for it was very obviously that there was serious concerns for me, problems with this bill. The members who have spoken passionately about this bill, in favour of this bill, have not addressed any of the serious concerns that have been raised. I don't believe from myself or many of the other members. All they've done is misrepresent the genuine concerns that have been raised in here. Now, I heard appeals to emotion from one side of the debate, but no empathy for the feelings of others, and no acknowledgement of facts. I'll start again by reminding those that attacked me that I was raised by a single mother. People harp on about lived experience, and however, when they are confronted with someone who's had lived experience, does not support their ideological views, they get nasty. I never said that kids with single parents could not do well. I know for myself, as I've stated, I was from a single mother, so I consider myself to have done pretty well. So people can overcome adversity. The point I was making, that in my experience, most kids in single parent families would prefer to have both biological parents around them, you know, in their perfect world. It's not saying that nothing else is possible, it's just what I experienced and what I seen and believed. So that's just a statement of fact. Life is sad sometimes. There's a huge difference between a family becoming a single family due to sad circumstances and creating a single family as the predetermined starting point. So when you have a single person and you're creating this bill you're creating that single family. So it wasn't a single family to begin with. This bill does that. So that's the law we're creating. It wasn't a single family to begin with. Okay. But others on the other side of this debate take things to extremes. I've heard that that I denied the existence of some people. I mean, what does that even mean? I'm not sure. Of course they exist. If anyone is denying the existence of things, is the supporters of this bill in its current form, because they're denying biology. They are denying the existence of biological women, and they're denying the lived experience of experiences of kids from single parent families and adoptees. They're denying the existence of human trafficking, financial coercion, and the exploitation of women in our society. That's why this bill needs to be referred to the committee for detailed scrutiny. Now, as I said before, I mentioned the Honourable Michelle Hoffman and the experiences she's had as a mother and the different circumstances. So, you know, there was already that point made about the 18-year-olds, and in the old bill it was 25 and you had to have had a child. So, you know, I said earlier that even that alone would be enough to send it to committee to find out why, when you look around the country and around the world, why are we wanting to have 18-year-olds and taking away from the 25-year-old with a baby now to make high school kids basically be able to create human life and then be expected to give it away and make that decision. And again, I'll restate that every woman has that right to do that. It's her body. She can grow a little baby inside her and give that away if she likes. But I think the reality when it comes to it and the ongoing effects that that young person would have if they were to do it at 18 especially, would be ongoing, long-lasting, and could have very traumatic effects on them into the future. And so I don't want to be any part of creating a bill that opens up that possibility. Now, this bill is very different from the last bill, as I've stated, from the previous one, and there's not been enough consultation. I've heard other members talk about it, about the very little consultation that happened for this bill. Supporters of this bill say that it has wide support. However, I haven't seen any support of that. I'd like to know where they're getting that idea that it's got wide support. Have they gone out and talked to everybody out there? Have they run surveys? Where is that wide support statement keep coming from? Another reason to refer it to committee, to find out, is that true? Does it have wide support? Where is that actual premise coming from that is being claimed that this bill has wide support? Possibly the bill may have some wide support for certain parts of the bill, and that could be correct. Again, a good reason why we should send it to committee, for that to be investigated and checked out if that is true. We need to hear more from people who were adopted and what impacts what the impacts are of trying to find their biological origins. You know, we need better understand the risks of coercion of young women and the risks of commercial surrogacy by stealth. Again, some of these things that need to be checked out, investigated, another good reason to send it to committee. Now, as the Honourable Marika Grunwald outlined yesterday, and I'll quote her, if someone were to go to the United States for commercial surrogacy, the average cost would be around $150,000. In Ukraine or Georgia, it may be less, around $75,000. It would not be hard to pay a surrogate $75,000 under this arrangement. Under this legislation, nothing would prevent a couple from giving their surrogate something like $30,000 to cover their rent in this market. That is not unreasonable. $30,000 to help them buy a car because they want a baby, they want the baby and the mother to be safe, and $15,000 for foregone earnings. Before we know it, we're already sitting at about $75,000, which is the cost of a commercial surrogate arrangement in some parts of the world. without having left the state. We can add on top of that any reimbursements they might choose to give along with maternity leave payments, and suddenly that sum adds up to 6 figures. Again, as mentioned yesterday and as I've just read out, that requires further looking into, and by sending it to committee we can find out why and how these broad sort of terms that have been put in place about payments and the change of finances happen. Do the supporters of this bill want a future where women are seen as breeding chambers that can be bought? Now, I think the Dr Brian Walker admitted the age limit for surrogacy being reduced to 18 needed further discussion, which he stated yesterday in his contribution. So there's someone who's stated that they're going to support the bill, but has also stated that, 18 years old needs further discussion. So again, that's not coming from the side of people who are not wanting to pass this bill. That's from someone who's already come out and saying they're supporting the bill. That is another good reason why it's a good idea to send it to the committee to have these answers discussed, investigated more, and to see is it just a bill that the government just wants to push through how it is, and is it they're saying it's a perfect bill because they're all talking about how great it is, that it doesn't need changing, that people over here are just, targeting people of, same sex or whatever it may be, but that's not the case. People over here do have genuine concerns, and they're being treated as if it's just a target on certain people when it's not true. I spoke about my sister who had, a few children and a couple who have been adopted, and the experience of watching that and the regret of her being a young woman giving her children up for adoption, and the regret she had afterwards. And not only once but twice, because her mind was still too young to understand the implications that was going to have on her mind and her psychological and mental health moving forward. I know to this day she still regrets it, and I too know how it affected many of my family. So when we're talking about effects on people, we've got to take in effects on everybody. As I spoke about in my other speech about this bill, there's grandparents, there's, brothers, sisters, there's everybody. And yes, it's not our right to decide what your family member does, whether they give away their child or not, but it does have impact on people. And when we're talking about impact on communities and when we're creating laws, it doesn't always just get refined down to one person or two people in this case, whether it be the surrogate mother and the receiving parents. There's a lot of other things at play and different people that come into that scenario, and the mental health that can have. Because I know that the effect it had on my mother, having my nephews given away. Like, for her, she definitely didn't want her to do that. But again, it wasn't her choice. So it's a great reason to send it to committee. It's to find out further, changing it to 18, is it going to have the impacts I'm talking about? Because these are different. This was an adoption, it was foster and then adoption. So it's slightly different. It's not surrogacy and it's not creating a baby to give away, but it still has the same effects. The young person still wouldn't know, and they give away their first baby. Now there was a study by the University of Melbourne that showed it was difficult for those seeking surrogacy to find over 25s to even agree to it, and that's a major roadblock to surrogacy. So again, there's studies there that obviously say that it's hard to get a surrogate over 25 years old. So you've got to ask the question, has it been reduced in this bill to 18 to make it easier to get a surrogate parent? And then is that in whose best interest is that in? The young person who we're going to be trying to find young people. I mean, all of the parties quoted in the media survey after the 2007 Western Australian bill was tabled indicated their inability to comply with its requirements. Desiree and Stephen Case, intended parents who had been involved in the process of campaigning for the laws, reported that they were unable to find a birth mother over the age of 25.
Order member noting that the Honourable Rod Caddies.
Thank you, President. Having started and been interrupted on a few occasions now with the proceedings of the House, I'd like to take this opportunity to make a final appeal to the honourable members of this place. I'm aware, I've been made aware that it's a conscience vote for, both Labor and Liberal, so I want to appeal to that conscience now. Now, this bill is not straightforward. It deals with something that's very emotive. That's about the creation of life, the birth of a child, the love of family, and the emotional needs of all humans. I've heard arguments from the other side, and to be clear, I understand them. As I've already said, there are many families that are loving, supportive, and valued. Not all of them take the form of a traditional nuclear family. This debate is not about judging anyone for wanting to have children. Wanting to have children, it's a normal biological urge that we probably all have, or most of us do. And the creation of a child is a biological process. Now, biology allows any male and female to create new life. It's not something that can be regulated by government. Some people are not able to have children due to their biology. Some people tragically have medical reasons why they can't get pregnant and have children of their own. Now, originally, IVF and surrogacy was conceived to address biological infertility. And there's no argument that many people who suffer from biological infertility have benefited greatly from these practices. It's wonderful that children have been born as a result of, through IVF and surrogacy. Some people are not able to have children due to their sexuality, which has been referred to as social infertility. I think this is a new made-up term. I'm not sure we really understand what it means. Is that a loner male who hates females? Is that socially infertile? Let's not beat around the bush. We're talking about same-sex couples not being able to have a child by unassisted biological means. It's not that they have a medical condition specific to them which prevents them from having a child. It's just not possible for a male to get another male pregnant. It's not possible for a female to make another female pregnant. Not recognising this is biological denial. It's the whole reason for this bill. We're being asked to allow socially infertile people to be able to access IVF and surrogacy, which were conceived for biologically infertile people. It's very complex. Very complex consideration should be explored further. And that's why I want it to be referred to committee, because there's a lot of issues here that have been raised. There should be a focus on encouraging more adoptions to take place in WA, matching kids, with need for a loving family with, maybe some of these parents that are wanting to have children. Again, we don't know if this has been considered or researched. So, remember, we're not legislating to only address the majority of cases where all motives are pure. When we pass legislation, we need to consider the impact on all the people that it'll have effect on. over a long period of time, not just at the present time of when it happens, but like I've spoken before about all the psychological and the trauma it may cause into the future for many different people. And that's where this bill really fails in its current form. The supporters of this bill are completely focused on the commissioning adult, and very little concern, it appears to be shown, for the biological mother and the child in the relationship to this surrogacy. The supporters of this bill say the people most affected by this legislation will be the LGBTQ community. I disagree. The most affected people this legislation will be the women and the children, specifically the young women actually, the 18-year-olds we were talking about, and the children who are conceived through this process. So I have real concerns about the young girls. Like an 18-year-old girl will live with the physical and emotional impact of giving away a child. There's nothing to stop coercive control into the future, financial enticement to stop young women from making a decision that they may regret. That's another good reason, like I said, to send it to committee so that we can investigate that more, just look at all the outcomes and from what that may look like if it was to happen, that some of these 18-year-old girls do get enticed into doing something they may not have really thought about in the right way. Now, the supporters of this bill may say they're concerned about the welfare of women and girls, but what is in this bill that stops a very small number of evil people doing very unacceptable things? Now, even if we were to assume some 18-year-olds might be mature enough to make the decision, all certainly aren't. Like, not every 18-year-old would be mature enough to make that decision. What is there to stop a wealthy couple from grooming, maybe enticing young girls and then pressuring the young girl into surrogacy arrangements? We don't know that. That would be something we could look at, that in a committee that could be looked into. Again, I remind members we need to make laws that protect a majority of from the potential evil deeds of a minority of people. Now, if this law passes in its current form, those that supported it will be responsible for cases where young women are treated as breeding chambers by a small number of evil people. Not everyone, obviously, a majority won't, use it for that reason. Probably 99% won't. But, I've heard it mentioned before in many different laws and that. We've heard it in the firearms thing. If we'll stop one of these bad, shootings, whatever it may be, I think even if we stop that really tiny, small number of evil things happening in the future, it's worth sending it to committee to see what are the problems that may arise, and by this bill going through as it is. Now, you have this chance to refer this to committee now to address these concerns. If you choose not to, I guess that's on you, and will be forever on every member that chooses that. The group of people who will be most affected by these laws, I would argue, are the children who are conceived as a result of this bill. Those who support the legislation talk about the child as if it was a possession, but a child's not a possession. It won't always do and act and feel the way you want it to. And the children who don't have both their biological parents growing up will tell you that it's something that affects them on some level. And I've mentioned that when I was speaking about that before. Myself in my own circumstances, always wondering about that stuff. I heard the Honourable Dan Caddy mention me when he was talking about that I was targeting single parents like it was a bad thing, and talking about Mr Obama there. He actually went in search of his biology. He said how much it affected him in his book. You should have a look at that. He actually talks about how that affected him, and he went back to Kenya, I think it was, to explore that, because he had that wonder in his mind about his biological parents. So there's them points there. It's not targeting single parents. And probably to elaborate on that, he also didn't actually get raised by a single parent. He did spend a large percent of his time with his grandparents in Hawaii and time with a stepfather in Indonesia. So it's not quite the truth in that he was raised by a single parent. He was for a little while. Anyway, children who don't have both them parents, it's going to have some effect on them in some way, I'm sure. Like I said, that's lived experience. That's time I've spoken to so many young people who have had that in their mind. When people find out their parents are their non-biological parents, it can cause them to have strong emotional response in a lot of cases. We've seen that in reports with adoption cases and stuff. In many cases, the knowledge that they're not with their biological parents result in a lifetime of feeling maybe disconnected and betrayed. Have we really considered the impact on this bill on the West Australians who will be conceived as a result of this bill? Are they going to feel that? Is it the same as being adopted and then finding out later on? And you've got to wait till, I think, 16, was it, that before it can be disclosed. That's a long time in a young person's life to not know, and then it sort of drop on them. So I strongly encourage members to really put the children first in this legislation by referring it to the committee. You agreed to refer the firearms legislation to the committee. We referred the post and boast bill to the committee, so why not this one? One that there are many concerns raised here. And the argument of we've waited long enough, it's not valid. If you don't agree to send this to committee, you're saying that you don't care that 18-year-old West Australian females could be exploited by someone in the future. You're saying that you don't care that a child will maybe need to confront their biological origins at some point in their life, as I said about like the adopted children doing the same thing. Now, this bill addresses the immediate wishes of a small section of our society, but it risks causing long-term harm for others. This is just not a medical question, it's an ethical question. It's not just transactional, we're talking about real people, biological women and children. And no, we can't leave it to the medical profession to regulate details. Doctors are just people as well. They make errors of judgment and in some cases lack common sense. Like many in society, there's plenty of people out there, so in all areas of life. So sending this bill to committee is the right thing to do. There are many problems which have been highlighted by different members, including myself. The issues that people have raised are genuine. They're not motivated by hate for anybody. Again, like I said, I've been targeted about that I'm going against single parents. It's actually completely nothing of the sort. So not agreeing with everyone is not hate. Now, being concerned for the long-term welfare of young women is not hate. Having empathy for people who struggle with the knowledge of having been adopted is not hate. Again, I'm appealing to your conscience. It's a conscience vote, so I want your conscience not just to consider the wishes of the LGBT community and the single people you're talking about. I want you also, your conscience, to think about the long-term welfare of biological women and the children that will be born into this situation of surrogacy. Now, this legislation allows people to commission a child to be created. I want your conscience to consider if everyone should be able to do so. I want your conscience to consider if this bill could result in even one unspeakable terror, one horrible act like we talked about in firearm stuff where people, have been shot and killed. Is one case too many. I want your conscience to think, should it be sent to committee and investigate this bill to see that we are putting through a good law that isn't going to allow even one case that is really bad. Now, if you think this bill does everything that it could to protect vulnerable women and children and addresses the tiny amount of people that will do unacceptable things, then that's on you. I guess that's your conscience. If you believe that this bill will do that, and you can accept that, then I guess that's the way you will vote on that, and you won't send it to committee. Now, you have the chance to test that belief by referring it to committee, though. So if you think it's a great bill, let's send it to committee, let it be investigated and investigated some more to work out that are these concerns that have been raised by different members genuine concerns, or can we just say, right, they were wrong, we've investigated, we've looked at their concerns and we've analysed it like we've given review on the Post and Boast Bill and the Firearms Act already. Now, is there a better option than testing your belief when there's a headline in the future of this legislation having enabled that will disgust you? If something actually does happen, it's going to be on you to have to live with that. So I don't think there's a harm in hearing from groups other than rainbow families and medical specialists who earn their living from this area of medicine. So why not have the committee hear from, say, WA adoptees? Why not have the committee hear from, women's advocacy groups in the community? Do members really think this legislation is so good that it couldn't be improved? I think, I suggest members allow their conscience to refer it to the committee, that they're not committing themselves to anything apart from thinking about this more. As I've said, it's a very different bill to anything that's been previously considered. It's certainly not the same as the last piece of legislation that went through. The introduction of the concept of social infertility being equivalent to medical infertility needs further consideration. It's what it was designed for initially, and now what we're asking it to be looked at in a completely different sort of light now. Has the government consulted with various ethnic and cultural groups if they are okay with this bill? If so, which ones? Because I haven't sort of heard much about who's been consulted, and certainly not the, I'm sure that this House talks about on that side, especially about the different ethnic groups and cultural groups. So have they been listened to? What view did the Islamic community have in relation to allowing same-sex couples and trans people to access surrogacy? The people who support this bill usually tell us that not considering the views of minority groups is a racist thing. But I guess when one minority group's views strongly oppose the views of another minority group, things get a bit tricky with the woke logic, I guess. Now, we need to better understand if allowing an 18-year-old woman to enter into a surrogacy agreement is really in their collective best interests. We need to decide if people most affected by this legislation will be the biological female surrogate mother and the child, or the commissioning adults. Members need to ask their conscience if this bill really does put children first. If it really does do everything to stop evil people using these laws to enable them to do things in the future. And like I said, I'm not saying that everybody we're trying to enter into this is going to do evil things. It's just about a tiny little, subsection of our society which we know do use things to do evil in this world. Now, I've asked my conscience, and I think referring this to committee is the best option. I think it's a reasonable request to say to members on your conscience, do you really believe in your heart that this bill is perfect and that nothing that has been said here by all the members who have contributed about concerns they have for the bill mean nothing? So sending this to committee is the compromise that's needed now. Otherwise, this bill in its current form is a real danger to women and children in WA. By not referring it to committee, members might be confronted on their decisions today. So there are evil people in this world. Our job is to make it hard for evil people in this world by making laws that are really good laws, ones that eliminate as much ability as possible for people to find ways to use the laws we create for their own, like I said, evil. Yeah, I think it's probably about all I'll contribute today. And if members, refuse to make good on these laws, I guess myself, One Nation in the future, will be there to remind them that they had the chance today to improve this legislation. Like I said, all well and good if you think the legislation's perfect and that committee won't find improvements, then I guess you will live with that, and when things do happen in the future, you'll have to be accountable for that for yourself. But I just think now is our opportunity to give it more scrutiny, to really investigate the things that have been said by many members in this House about how it could be improved. So thank you. That's finished for me.